to be previewing game week 20. We're going to be previewing this week. It's been a long time, to be fair, since me and Paul have been here. Long time no see, Paul. Paul, how you doing?
I'm very well, Luke. Yeah, thanks for having me back. I'm back in the UK, so back on the sofa here on a Thursday night, ready to talk all things National League and get some predictions in. Looking forward to it. It's been nearly a month, isn't it? So
yeah. Well, of course we've had the disruption, haven't we? Because obviously you went on holiday to Florida. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm sure the viewers will be very interested to see where you disappeared to. But of course, we've been speaking about how you've been abroad, and then last week when you were actually back, I believe, FA Cup, and the FA Cup. I love the FA Cup to bits, but it does disrupt the podcast. So I do apologise to all those that, of course, have missed out in previous weeks. And I think, to be honest, a lot of people have been missing yourself as well, Paul. But Paul, was it a good holiday?
It was brilliant. I was able to get over to Florida for 2 weeks during October half term with the family and rode a few roller coasters at Walt Disney World and Busch Gardens and SeaWorld. So, yeah, back to the clocks going back and the dark nights and the cold weather. But the only good thing about winter is the football season, right? So we're back at it.
That's the peak time for the podcast, though, isn't it? There's no excuses now, guys, not to tuning in at 7 o'clock. It's dark. The curtains are drawn. So you need to be, every Thursday, you need to be sat in front of that TV screen or in front of your phones or laptops, etc. And you can tune into probably the only podcast that's on the National League on YouTube. But yeah, we'll have a look at what the live chat has been saying. Of course, a lot to talk about tonight because we haven't been here for a while. Please remember to like and subscribe, though, everyone. It does help and it gets it out to more people. So first person in, we've got Callum, who's come in, and he said Saturday is going to be a fun one. Yeah, it certainly is. I'm off to that game, Chesterfield versus Barnet. Should hopefully be doing a vlog. I believe that we're a Chesterfield fan, wasn't it? I'll hopefully be doing a vlog for that game, so that should be good. Some might be saying I should be at Halifax, but honestly, there's no way of me getting there. Chesterfield's very easy because it's only 2 trains from where I live, so that's probably the reason that I've gone to Chesterfield and not gone to Maidenhead, because there's no transport. Joe's coming. Said
there's never been a 0-0 draw in 30 meetings, so clearly he's expecting goals, Luke. He's expecting goals, isn't he?
Yeah, and then we've also had he said only 4 draws, 2-1, 1-1, and 2-2. And then next one we've got
Keza says hello. Hello, Keza. Welcome as always.
And then we've got. I'm just gonna have to apologise, guys, because my laptop's about to die, so I need to get my Is that a bit? Is that big Kieran? Yeah, that's another. And then we've had Ash, who's come in.
Evening, Luke.
Welcome,
evening, Ash.
Finally found it.
He's found his charger, so we're back in action. Yeah. Evening, Ash. Welcome to the podcast.
And then I tell you who has arrived. Mr. Luke is in the building. Hello, gents. Hope you are well. Please do not talk about our recent results. Thank you very much. Birthday tomorrow. Hoping for 3 points on Saturday as birthday present. No pressure, lad. I'm guessing that'll be your big 18th, won't it, Luke? So you'll be celebrating that in style, I would believe. So, yeah, happy birthday to you for tomorrow. We won't sing happy birthday to you because I've not got a very good singing voice, and I don't think, Paul, do you? Or
no, not a chance. Happy birthday, Mr. Luke, but yeah, you're not getting a song out of me. Not a chance.
And then we've had almost halfway through the season already.
Yes. And Chris Lever, good day, boys. Hello, Chris. I assume you might be coming in from Australia, so welcome.
Yeah, I believe it. It's the Oldham fan from Australia, I believe.
There you go.
It now. And then Mr. Luke's come in and said, "How was that jet lag, Paul? Did the Wheelstone results affect some of it?"
The jet lag was horrific. I have to admit, my wife and I've got 3 children, so we were run ragged in the theme parks for 14 days, and we came home absolutely knackered. And the Willstone results didn't really go according to plan, did they? So whilst we were away, so it didn't really help too much, no.
And then we've had the dream team are back from our Maidenhead fan. You're not going to be happy with my prediction. I think you've come to terms with it because Halifax are playing Maidenhead, so you know what the score's going to be. But please stick around for that. We'll talk a bit about that.
And Robert, hello guys, hoping to widen the gap this Saturday. Chesterfield playing Barnet, obviously, and yeah, well, I guess we'll talk about that in a bit more detail, Luke, won't we? Clash of the week, I think.
Yeah, that's probably the major talking point of tonight is that, because it's first versus second. Maybe for the whole division, it's not been built up as much as maybe it should be. If that makes sense. Like last season, if I remember rightly, when Wrexham and Notts, I think were at the top of the table this time last year, there was only a similar point gap between the two sides at the moment. If Barnet win this game, they'll go to the top of the league, and it'll be almost in their hands. That'll be a talking point for tonight. So before we come on to that, I forgot to mention, please remember to check out our sponsors of the podcast, Cards Accepted. Use the link below to get 50% off your order, no contracts or monthly fees. So please check those out after the podcast, guys. There's a link in the description. Also, you can see along there, it's coming across too. Also, a bit of a shout out to Non-League Bible for promoting the podcast on his social medias too. And please remember to like and subscribe. So we've got a few topics before we come on to the predictions tonight. They've been either sent in or I've made them myself. I think one is probably, who is the manager of the season so far then, Paul? Now for you, who would you be looking at?
There's probably a couple, isn't there? I mean, you can't go too much further than maybe Dean Brennan, in Barnet, in terms of the improvement that he's made on the squad from last season. And I think they were the most. I've always said I think they were the most improved team in the National League last season, and they've gone on strength to strength this year. Andy, at this present time, Andy Woodman is still. I think he's probably doing a little bit of a miracle at Bromley. I can't imagine that they've got the biggest budget in the world. Yeah, they've got a great infrastructure, but they're reliant on youth. He lost some really key players in the summer, and he's they're looking very, very hard to beat. And possibly the Solihull manager Andrew Wing's come in, very unfancied, new director of football. There was a lot of upheaval, and they've only lost 2 games all season. So there's a shout for maybe a number of them. Tommy Widrington's come in, and his recruitment at Aldershot was, from my point of view, seemed not suspect, but a little bit unknown, and maybe found wanting a bit, but they certainly haven't. So there's a number of managers that are really excelling and doing well for themselves.
Who'd be the one though, Paul, for you? Which one would it be that just stands out to you so far this season?
Joe, I think I would go with Andy Woodman. Done well in the cup. They got in the playoffs last year, didn't quite make it. That could quite easily have sort of dropped away, having lost the likes of Kellen Fisher. But again, he's found some real gems in there. Ben Crowhouse up top is probably the next EFL prospect, and they're just so hard to beat. So I would just go with him, probably just shading Dean Brennan, to be honest.
For me, like I've mentioned, there's a few, and it's hard to put it down to one at the moment. Of course, you look at Andy Woodman, and they're third in the league. We know Bromley don't have the biggest budget in the division by any stretch of the imagination. I'd probably say, and I know it's a very, maybe I wouldn't say an obvious one, but one that you'd say, well, he's had lots of money. He's got the squad that he's dreamt of now because of the money that he's got behind him. But I think Paul Cook should be added to that conversation. I know that he's had a lot of money behind him. We know Chesterfield are well backed, but there's a lot of expectation at Chesterfield this season. And to be fair, so far, you can't really ask any more from them. They've had a few tiny little bad results, and that's probably the only one being Altrincham away from home. A few maybe disappointing points dropped. At home, they've been immaculate so far this season. They've only dropped points once at home all season, and that was to Oldham right at the start of the season. I think the second home game of the season. So for me, you can't really ask anything more of Paul Cook, but maybe he doesn't get that because, of course, of the money that he has behind him. think Tommy Witherington, the impact that he's had there, considering where Aldershot have been for the past couple of seasons, he's just come in there and, totally changed the ambition of the club to now being where Aldershot fans have probably always wanted, and that is to be a side that competes to get into the EFL. And to be fair, so far this season, Aldershot aside, it comes on nicely probably to the next conversation, that I definitely have been going under the radar and are suddenly now starting to get a lot of respect, I think, from the majority of the division, and probably got people in here as well. So yeah, Witherington then, and Aldershot overall so far this season. What do you make of the campaign, and what do you think's behind this success so far?
Oh, that's a difficult one, is it? He's obviously found a bit of a gem with Taylage up top, coming out of the Brighton Academy. He's clearly got quality and youth on his side. It appears he's got good balance of experience and youth. He's got some untapped potential that are probably excelling, I would suggest. If you liken it to how Wealdstone, I'm watching Wealdstone every week. Last season, some of their players really excelled and they were unknown. And I think Aldershot have done similar with some of their players. I think it helps that they've gone on a bit of a run and they're doing well, because we've always said, Luke, haven't we? They've got a good fan base who are very expectant, and if they start to do well, they get backed, and clearly that's shown. I mean, they've gone into 7th place, haven't they? And you sort of slowly made their way up. Now, I saw them early in the season down at the recreation ground. They beat Wealdstone. On reflection, I thought they were a very good team, very efficient at what they did. They exploited the high line that Wealdstone played that day. They picked them off when they needed to, rode their luck a little bit. You think if Wealdstone had scored early when they probably should have done, the result may have been different. But they took advantage of that, and I was quietly impressed with them, and no one had really sort of picked up on it at that point. So, I think they're very, very good, and aside from that, they've won 4 of the last 5 games, including what we spoke about just before coming on there, that impressive FA Cup win on Saturday.
I think for me with Aldershot, what I'm finding impressive at the moment isn't just how they've started the season, is the fact that they're nailing down these players for the long term. Now, a side like Aldershot, you'd probably say at the moment, transfer window in January, you're going to be looking at Stokes, you're going to be looking at Tolora, you're going to be looking at, the defensive line and how well that's done so far. You could probably look at the majority of the squad, Jones as well, who just signed new contracts. But what they've done is, like I mentioned, players are signing new contracts, that the management team are signing new contracts as well. So, it's clear that they're building something. And yes, if players do leave in the summer, if Aldershot don't manage to get promoted, they're going to make a profit on those players, because they'd have to leave for a fee, which means they can just add to that the following season. And that's what I'm finding so impressive at the moment. And probably another thing is the actual style of football. It's very, very good to watch on the eye, very attacking minded, which is something that, I think a side like Aldershot are wanting. He's a manager that's got an attacking style of football, because the crowd is quite demanding down there. And for me, I look at the games. We haven't even mentioned it yet. Games like Swindon game away from home. There aren't many sides that would have the confidence to go to somewhere like Swindon, especially when you're in the league below, against a big club like Swindon, and just be at them from the start, because they were 7-0 up at one point. And, I don't think there's another, maybe you'd have a case for Chesterfield, but even you can't say any club would do that. There aren't many clubs in the whole of England that would score 7 goals, away from home at Swindon in any match, to be honest, because, I think the fact was Aldershot didn't go there to try be defensive and catch them on the break. They went there to win. And from the start, they got a goal. It wasn't like we're going to sit back for the next 90 minutes now. We're going to go again and again and again. And, that's what's so good about Aldershot at the moment. Speaking of players that might get moves to the EFL, is there any in mind for you at the moment? Maybe you'd look at sides that maybe aren't doing quite well in the division, and maybe, that they have a few standout players who would be looking to maybe get a move into the EFL this season. Maybe some playoff teams, perhaps, even if you look at that side of things.
Yeah, I mean, the one, as I said, I think Ben Crowhouse at Bromley was one that has stood out for me. He's only 18 years old, come through their academy. He scored an impressive goal against Wealdstone when I was down there. I think it was his first start that night, and he stayed in the team. You think who they've got up top? Michael Cheek, the other chap's name escapes me. So he's keeping some established names out, and I think he certainly is one to look at. I watch Charlie Barker every week at Wealdstone. He's come out of the academy system at Charlton, and at 19, 20 years old, height and pace is probably something that's stopping him going further. But his defensive qualities, his leadership qualities are there to see. So, they're definitely two on games that I've watched. I haven't watched games for a few weeks now, Luke, with being away, etc. So, those two lads are two that I've sort of looked at and sort of consistently seem like they could make that move. As the season develops, we'll get other talents that sort of emerge and go on a run of form because the team's going on a run of form.
Yeah.
But there's definitely going to be some gems out there. Nick
Horton, he's been mentioned 3 times in the live chat just there. He's someone, who we were well aware of before the season had kicked off at Fylde, and has been one of the key players so far for Fylde, and a big reason why they've managed to get out of the relegation zone now.
I think
the clubs would look at.
Yeah, I think he was a lad that scored from the halfway line against us down at the Vale, and a very, very impressive piece of skill. You could see the confidence in him. He was head and shoulders above any other creative force that they had in that team, to be honest with Fylde. So yes, having seen him, I was impressed with him on the day as well, for definite. And one that I did think when I watched the lad that played for Notts County, that's now playing for Dagenham, and the midfield player, God, again, his name escapes me, but I genuinely looked at him and thought, he could probably be playing at a higher level.
You'll probably be thinking of Frank Vincent.
Yes, Frankie Vincent. Yes,
seen his name pop up. I think Gateshead, they may be a club that, especially with how the form has suddenly turned at the moment, they might be a club, that people will be looking at and particularly Mike Williamson will be looking at their type of players to take with him to MK. And I think now they might see an opportunity. Other managers maybe in this division who've got bigger budgets and who are in the Football League might think, we've got an opportunity now that it's kind of going downhill. I wouldn't say going, I think that's a bit extreme because it's only been 2 bad defeats. But there's certainly an opportunity to poach through their players there. Greg Ollie, maybe one. Although, he's been there a long time. Would he be too loyal to leave mid-season? I thought that about Williamson, and he did. Dinanga might be a striker that you'd be looking at. Stephen Ween as well, who's there at the moment. I think there's a lot of players in the squad. Do you think they're a club that if you were a Gateshead fan at the moment, you'd be very nervous, not just because of the league form at the moment, but also the fact that there's a chance that your squad could literally be raided?
Oh, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And, it's often hard to quantify what a manager is or isn't doing for a football team and a football club, isn't it, Luke? And clearly, Mike Williamson, and this is no disrespect to Rob Elliott, who's taken over for the time being, but Mike Williamson obviously had something going for him and had some sort of chemistry with that squad, because he worked wonders with them last season, getting to the trophy final and having that huge run right the way through to the back end of the season, where they almost looked like they not certain for relegation, but that they could have been down there. And to continue that with the recruitment he had in the summer to get some of those lads in to replace some really, really top players that he lost, to continue with what they were doing again until he left was quite remarkable. So it's there's no suggestion those players have just decided to down tools because Mike Williamson's gone, but it clearly shows the effect he had on that squad and that team. And he's hoping for our sake, because they're a good footballing side, that Rob Elliott sort of starts picking up results with them and they carry on. But I think you're right. Come January, there's going to be some clubs either higher up in the National League or in the EFL looking at some of their prospects.
Hiccup's coming, who's an Aldershot fan and also an Aldershot vlogger. I'd probably say up there with one of the best vloggers in this division. Very entertaining as well. He's coming and said, it's Thursday and I'm still buzzing after that result. The best game I've watched in my life. Yeah, I bet it was, to be fair. I knew you wouldn't let this go and you're still going on about it, but fair play. I think I'll be going on about it for a long time myself as well. Yeah, so we've talked about Gateshead. I'm trying to think if there's any other clubs, but for me, I think, the clubs inside the top 12, I don't think there's many clubs, maybe Woking, but, a lot of clubs, they're quite settled, I think, the players there. They've been there for quite a while now. Maybe you'd look at Bournemouth, but then again, they're not the sort of fashionable club that I think teams come looking for. Halifax might be one, but I'd like to think they'd see out the full season. I think another topic that could be good, maybe, and it's one that I think is quite major at the moment, and maybe I don't think personally Barnet are getting the respect that they deserve, considering that maybe including myself, a lot of people thought that they were going to just drop off this season, and it was just a one-off last season. But the fact that they've got even stronger this season from the previous season says a lot about them. Yet a lot of people are not hearing much about them on social media. Do you think they are, and I've probably said this before, but do you think they are a proper title contender for Chesterfield? Do you think they are, or do you personally think no?
Without a shadow of a doubt, there's no... you can't dismiss the start that they've had. I mean, I don't know what their points per game ratio is, but everyone lauded Notts County and Chesterfield last year with, they could all both get 100 plus points and 100 this and 100 that. I think Barnet are on for a similar number, so are Chesterfield. So listen, I think they're probably at this present time the only real contender to Chesterfield. I think it's a marathon, not a sprint. Have they got the legs? Who knows? You've got January to strengthen. Tony Caranthos has obviously backed Dean Brennan and his management team to go and get some really good footballers in the summer, but to almost bolster the squad, because I think we both know Trevor Nell, and Trevor follows Barnet, and he said last season their 11 or 12 was strong, but their squad wasn't. Their squad is now strong. He can interchange and it won't affect what he's putting on the pitch, and I think that's a massive thing in the National League if you're going to sort of go for promotion or then playoff places. And you see that in the likes of Notts County, Wrexham, Stockport, Hartlepool, Chesterfield, all these teams that have got promoted or near the top. I think that's probably why Bromley struggled maybe towards the, in the playoffs. So you cannot knock the fact that they're title contenders. Will they win the league? Time will tell. I don't think they will. I think Chesterfield are just going to be too strong for them, but it's going to be a good race.
Probably disagree on it being a bit of a race, because for me, and it might be a bit early and it might be another question here to you. I think if Chesterfield win the game this Saturday, I would, and this might be, a bit too early to say, but I'd say it'd be a one-horse race for the title. If Chesterfield won this upcoming game, of course, they've got to actually go to Barnet, but I think Barnet's best chance to be in this title race, and I think to gain the respect of the majority of the division, would be to go to Chesterfield and at least get a result. And for me, I think if they don't, we'd be getting a 4-point gap with a game in hand, I believe, as well, on Barnet. And maybe you'd say, well, that can change like that. Yes, it can. But Chesterfield, when were the favourites at the start of the season, they've got one of the biggest squad depths in the division. They're a bit like Barnet, like you mentioned, where they can name a number of different starting lineups, and it wouldn't change, the impact of the team. So for me, I personally feel if Chesterfield win this game on Saturday, I would virtually say, yeah, fair play. I know 18 games in, 19, 20 games in, but I think Chesterfield are going to go on to win this quite comfortably now. Is that something that you'd agree with, or do you think, no, that's a bit for me to say that at this stage?
No. That's a bold statement, Luke, and fair play if that does come out at the end of the season that you shatter this early that they're going to be champions. I think what you find with both teams, right, is last year Wrexham found a way to win. Notts County were a good footballing team and played teams off the park. They had two different stuff. I haven't seen Chesterfield or Barnet play too much this season, only what's sort of shown on the television. They both find ways to win. Barnet are very resilient. You know, they're picking up goals in the 90-plus minutes. They're using those extra minutes referees are giving teams, probably quite rightly on most occasions, to find results. Taking losses to draws and draws to win. You know, they played Dorking on the televised game a few weeks ago. I think they were 2-0 down. They looked dead and buried. They looked all at sea, and they end up winning 3-2. You know, that so I don't think you can count them out just yet. Yes, I think you're right. Going into the game Saturday, 4-point difference with a game in hand, that could make it 7. I still think it's a bit too early. We haven't hit that busy Christmas period yet. We haven't hit the January transfer window. We've always said good teams strengthen when they're on top. And I think a January transfer period is going to be really key to both Chesterfield and Barnet as to what they can attract to push on for that last 3 or 4 months of the season. So I think it's a bit too early, Luke. It's a bold shout. I do think Chesterfield will win the league, and that's not because of my Wealdstone bias. I just think they're a bit of a machine, and Paul Cook has got a lot of talent at his disposal.
I know you've mentioned the transfer window there and the busy months ahead, and you've said that's where it could change. But for me, that's where Chesterfield would properly thrive, and that's why I think Barnet do desperately need to get something from this game. Because, like I've said, if Chesterfield win this game, there'll be a 4-point gap. I think personally, if Barnet started getting injuries, they'd be affected more than what Chesterfield would. Both sides have got a number of different goal scorers, yes, but Barnet rely on, I think, one in particular, and that's Kabamba, as well as others, but he's the main source. And I think if he got injured, you know, you wouldn't have a target man up top. Where Chesterfield, the way they play, if Will Grigg got injured, I think they've got other players there to fill in. And for me, I genuinely feel, like I've said, I am kind of sticking my neck out here. I genuinely think if Chesterfield win this game on Saturday, I'm just going to go, yeah, sorry, Barnet, sorry to everyone else in the division. You might as well just focus on the playoffs now. Not saying that's how Barnet will see it. Barnet will still see it as, no, we can still be in this title race, and so will other clubs. But for me, realistically, so, as someone like myself, as someone who's seen Chesterfield play this season on a few occasions on the television, and of course as well when I went with Halifax, for me personally, if Chesterfield win this game, I would more or less say we've got no title race either. Before we come on to each game, we've got something that, and I forgot to mention this because it is quite a big thing at the moment. Akawaski, I think that's how you say it. Asante, known of him for quite a while, so I should be able to say it now. Left the club this week by mutual consent. He's been injured. Yeah, he's a quality striker, and I think probably one of the, I'd say, top 5 strikers in this division when he's fully fit and when he's on form. The problem with him is ever since COVID, the end of COVID, he's had a lot of major injury problems, and I don't think he's particularly come back the same player at Chesterfield. And you know, with how competitive the Chesterfield squad is now, he's going to struggle to really get any more opportunities there. So I think there's an opportunity for him at this level, I would like to think. I wouldn't want to see him drop down. There's a few clubs that have been rumoured, a few that I put together that I think would be interested in him and would suit the system. And one that I forgot to mention and then later added after a lot of high speculation was Kidderminster. Is that a fit that you could see at Kidderminster, Asante going there? And you think he'd offer something for them?
Without doubt. I mean, it would work for both parties, wouldn't it? You know, Kidderminster haven't scored more than 1 goal in a game all season, apart from against Ashton United in the FA Cup, which you'd expect Kidderminster as a National League team to be too strong for a National League North team. Don't get me wrong, a lot of National League teams went by the wayside due to teams in the lower divisions. But, you know, to not score more than 1 goal in a game for nearly 20 football matches is clearly a problem. Asante will want to play football matches. So you'd like to think that Kiddy would come along and say, look, you're going to get 90 minutes every week. As long as you start producing, he starts banging goals in for them. He could be one of those lads that end up playing back at a higher level in the National League. You know, if they ultimately get relegated, he could stay in the National League because someone's going to pick him up. he's got talent. There's no way that someone like Chesterfield wouldn't have him if he didn't have talent. You know, he now needs to start playing football games, doesn't he? So I think it could be that perfect fit. But there's going to be a number of clubs clambering for him because everyone wants centre forwards, and I think every football club and every football manager will turn around and say, "I can get the best out of you. Come and play for me." So, yeah, I don't think he's going to be short of offers. I think it probably will boil down to full-time status, what they might offer him in terms of a contract, months or years, and ultimately maybe what they might pay him. But, you know, he may have to look at it and think, I'm not going to get as much per week or per month, but I'm going to get an opportunity to put myself in that shop window to then push on again in the next year or two.
The more I thought about with Kidderminster, the more I think he would fit there. And that is because of, someone's mentioned it, that the players that they're bringing in, you know, because I think we're all aware Kidderminster defensively are probably sound and are good enough to survive. I've seen them when they came to Halifax, and I thought they were quite good defensively, and I didn't think they were that bad on the attacking side of things. They just couldn't put the ball in the net, and you know that's the major thing, isn't it, in football? What you need, and what is the difficult thing, is to find a prolific goal scorer. So I think he'd fit there. You know, they've brought in Hobson, who's on loan from Chesterfield, and he's had a big impact there and has definitely added something in recent weeks. Of course, you also look at Ben Tollett, and he's a player that I rate proper well, and you know, he's left Oldham, and I genuinely think he's one of the best footballers in this division. You know, and it comes down to something that I keep repeating when he is fully fit. And that is because a lot of players in this division, the reason they've not played high is because of fitness and injuries in the past. So for me, I think Tollett adds something there going forward, but he's not a goal scorer, and that goal scorer could be Asante, which he is. So for me, I think he'd fit there, get the service now. And I think, you know, you look at someone like Hobson, who we'll know from Chesterfield, and you look at some of the players in there, and you might think, you know what, I've got an opportunity here to help keep this side up. And like you mentioned, if Kidderminster didn't survive, then what he could do is, you know, I think there'd be a lot of clubs sniffing around for him. We'll talk about other clubs then, maybe, that might be interested in him. And one for me, I think few, I'd probably be saying York might be one, because I know they've been saying they need another striker. Akiniyemi's injured at the moment, and I don't think John Lewis is good enough for the ambitions of York City. They're struggling themselves at the moment. You might say Altrincham might be a club you'd have a bit of a shout for, because they're another club going forward. Halifax, I think, would suit him, but I don't think we're going to go for him. I think now, from what I heard last night from
It appears Luke has frozen. I don't know if that's happened to everybody else, but Luke, if you can hear me, it appears your feed has frozen at this present time. You were stuck mid-sentence, so unfortunately I can't see whether any of you guys have had the same issue as I have. I don't know if you can see me, guys, but it looks like Luke has his internet has just gone. He's messaging me. So as we were talking about, Asante, a fit for York, a fit for potentially Kidderminster. I personally think he's going to go to a football club that are going to guarantee him some minutes once he's up and running and back to match fitness. It may take a few matches for that to occur, but you know, the likes of Halifax not going to sort of take him on and sit him on the bench. You know, so I think, you know, from that point of view, a York, a Kidderminster, you know, if he's northern based, are going to be the likes of the teams that are going to look for him. Halifax may take him to strengthen the depth in that area, but yeah, And is he likely to go to the likes of Gateshead, Hartlepool, who've got a set number of strikers already? Yeah, I think he's going to have to go to somewhere that are going to be guaranteeing him minutes. If he's been injured for a long time, then he's going to want somewhere to go and sort of play. Unfortunately, I can't see your comments. Luke has just asked me whether I can, so unfortunately I can't sort of get you guys involved. But I know the other thing that Luke was going to want to sort of talk about with us in relation to the National League is, who do we think is going to be in the relegation zone? Who do we think could get in the playoff picture? The league is quite settled now, sort of as someone said, almost halfway through. So at least we can sort of start to see a picture of what's going on. And currently, when you look at who's in that bottom four, Oxford City have dropped in there recently. Let's have a look. Who else are in there? Let me just get the league up. Bear with me. Sorry, guys. So I've just got my phone here. So who have we got? We got Maidenhead, York, Oxford, and Kidderminster. So, he's back.
I don't know what happened there. It's definitely because we live in the countryside. But thanks for holding the fort.
That's all right.
I don't know what you've come on to. I don't know if you could have read the live chat or not.
No, I was unable to interact with our lovely listeners, but I sort of went on to the subject of the bottom four and the playoffs. So I was just literally going through who the bottom four were: Maidenhead, York, Oxford, and Kidderminster, using my trusty Flash Score app on my phone, because momentarily I forgot, apart from Oxford, who were in the bottom four. So I was just sort of suggesting, who do we think may be in and around that bottom four? We talked about Barnet and Chesterfield having that, well, I believe, a 2-horse race. You think it might not be that after Saturday, Luke? So interesting who's going to be in that bottom four and maybe come out of it and drop into it.
Well, I think for me at the moment, I think Kidderminster are a side that you might see an improvement from in the upcoming weeks with the players that they've brought in. I think I'd like to think York will get out of it just because of the amount of money that they've spent and the ambitions of the club. I don't know if you'd think that they're going to get out of it or if they're going to be in there for the whole season. Oxford, for me, are the one side that I think just are genuinely going to struggle this season. And I think they're kind of just happy to be here. And it is a bit unfortunate from them that they haven't. I know we're only early on and they're only 2 points outside of, getting out of this zone. But maybe for me, I just don't think we'll have enough to survive. And maybe have brought in the players to survive. Maybe Ebbsfleet, you'd say at the moment, are going to struggle. Same with Fylde and maybe Bournemouth and Wealdstone and Dorking. And I think after Dorking, that's when you'd have the cut-off point of those sides that are going to be down there. I don't know if there's what sides for you is the sides for you that you think are more or less going to be down.
I think Oxford City, without a shadow of a doubt. I've got a colleague who follows Oxford City home and away. And he messaged me in the week and sort of said, look, they don't have the quality and depth required for this league. And you need both, right? You can't go 40-odd games a season and not have depth in your squad. I think that's fairly obvious. He sort of said they're playing with effort, they're playing with grit, they're not playing badly, but they need a win. And I think ultimately it's going to cost them is their quality and depth. I think the difference, they've spent money on the infrastructure of the club, the infrastructure of the stadium, trying to get better facilities for the players. They do come in, and so actually they're going to be at a better position if they were to get relegated to maybe come back up and be in a better position to stay where they are. I think we've always talked about those bottom four that are there or thereabouts: York, Maidenhead, Kiddie, Fylde. They were all talked about start of the season. They're not showing me any form to suggest that there's going to be any uplift. The good thing for it is, if you look at it, between Ebbsfleet in 19th and Kidderminster in 24th, there's only 3 points. No one's been cut adrift, and I think that's what they've got to grip onto. Kidderminster are making efforts to strengthen their squad. They've picked up a few results to keep. no one has been cut adrift just yet, and I think that's the biggest thing that they're going to all sort of hang on to and hope for, is that actually we're still. It's only going to take 1 or 2 wins, 1 or 2 results, and they'll swap around. But those bottom 4, 5, or 6, I can't see Boreham Wood getting sucked into it, Luke. They're in a really
experience for this division.
They are. I definitely can see Wealdstone slipping into it. Their Wealdstone's home form at the moment is keeping them adrift, keeping them up rather. They've only lost 1 at home in the league. We haven't won. I think we've won 1 game in about 22 away games. So if our home form starts to go, I'm going to fear for us. But I don't think it will. I think that's what will keep us up. And I see him. I watch us every week, so I think I'm confident we've got enough to stay out. I think there's 4 teams worse than us at this present time, but that's not to say it won't change. York just have never inspired me. You know my thoughts on York. They've spent money.
Do you genuinely think they could go down?
They're not what are they showing us, Luke? They've brought in a new manager that's experienced at National League level. They haven't had that new manager bounce that we always see. Yes, their star strikers injured. Tyler Cordner was a big signing at the back. But what are they showing us? Even in the FA Cup, they struggled. So, and I haven't got a personal vendetta against York whatsoever, but I just, they're one of those teams that just need to just get on with it, and they're all mouth and no trousers, right? They've got to actually start showing something. Kidderminster are trying their best to show something. Oxford City are trying their best. Maidenhead, every year we know they try their best in their limited resources and their budget and their old 300-year-old ground and their small supporter base. They try their best. Fylde are a new team in the league. They're trying. York just they don't give me any inspiration that they're going to be anything but in that bottom 4 or 5. They may well stay up because of the size of them, because of their budgets, because of what they've got in their disposal. But I think Ebbsfleet, Wealdstone. I can't see Boreham Wood, but its potential. It'll be out of those bottom 6 or 7 without a doubt.
So do you not think that York will just climb out of it as the season goes on? Or do you think they're going to be, if they do stay, they'll be in the thick of it for the rest of the season? Because we know Maidenhead are going to be in the thick of it. If they stay up, if they don't, we know they're going to be down there because they don't have the players. They're part-time. There's not enough for me for them to climb out of it and climb into mid-table. Although they do have some, they have shown improvement recently. They have got a few players there that are very, very good. And I do genuinely think this Maidenhead side are a stronger Maidenhead side than last season. They've just got stronger towards the bottom this season. It's very, very open at the bottom. But you look at York, the wins that they've got: a win against Southend at home. A win against Woking, a win against Dagenham. A couple of weeks ago, that win against Woking would have been in the fourth team. I think Bromley also got a point against as well. They are actually showing that against the better teams, they're doing okay. For me, I think that's too big of a club to go down. I don't know about you. Do you genuinely think they're going to be in there for the whole season? Or
I quite honestly, yes, I do. They haven't won 1 in 4. There isn't that new manager bounce. They, even in the FA Cup, Luke, they drew with lower league opposition. They drew with Needham Market. They drew with Chester. Yes, they're a National League side, Chester, National League North. But you'd imagine York, the size, the amount of money they spent, what their expectations, they should be going and dealing with these teams. I'm not saying batter them, because no team, respectfully, no team should get battered in the FA Cup. And I know Swindon got battered by Aldershot, but they should be dealing with these teams, and they're not. And we keep talking about it. We've had this numerous conversations about York since the beginning of the season when Matt Ugler went in. Are they going to get out of it? They're still where they are 20 games later. They've not actually moved that much, have they? If anything, they've got worse. Even with the new manager coming in, they've not bounced. Aldershot have gone up. Halifax have shown a bit of bite, and they've gone up. When you look at the league, Southend have done them remarkably well. Dagenham, they started off they've pulled away. Wealdstone are staying where they are. Woking, Eastleigh have pulled away. York haven't. And listen, I could be completely wrong, but I can't see anything to the contrary that will tell me that they're going to do anything other than stay in and around where they are. They may well stay up because they're better resourced than the teams around them.
Yeah.
But someone's got to go down.
There's always a surprise. Like last season, I always thought, no, Scunthorpe, they'll get out of it when they didn't.
Torquay the year before.
Yeah.
Yeovil last season.
Yeah. Well, I thought Torquay would be. I just thought, yeah, they'll get out of it. They'll find a way. They're too big of a club. They've got Gary Johnson, and now they're calling for his name. Dorking not meant. Well, they're the cut-off point, and they're a club, who've been struggling recently. At the moment, they're very inconsistent. But what seems to happen is they always pull it out the hat when it starts to get tough. Aldershot at home, they had a massive amount of injuries. Prior to that, they'd lost loads of games. A lot of people were thinking they were doomed. They managed to get a win when no one expected it. To then go and lose when you think maybe they can get a bit of momentum against Dagenham, then go and lose. We'll probably come back to this as the show goes on, because of course we've got to get into the predictions. We're actually going to be doing our midweek predictions coming up too. Mid-season predictions, that is. So I do want to kind of keep avoiding Paul asking for who he thinks will definitely go down, because we don't want to spoil it for all you guys. But let us know who you think are going to go down. Let us know your predictions as it goes on, and I'll try and get to those if we do get any that do come in. Let's get on with it then. Let's get on with the games. Let me just share my screen, as that's always an issue with it. But as I'm doing that, let's have a quick look at the predictions. Paul, take it away. What's your thoughts on that? Been a long time since.
Look at that. I know we haven't done it. We haven't sort of been adding the tallies on because I've been away. Haven't been able to sort of get predictions in as much as I'd like. But wow, Luke, I'm back in the saddle, and there's only a point between us. So yeah. That's looking good. I can't see what you were plus because you got your podcast.
We both got it were like, I can't remember if we did one when and I got you to send them in or not. Or if this was
I definitely did one week where I sent them in. So I don't know how well I did. I wasn't keeping tally being away. But listen, to only be a point behind at almost the halfway stage, I'll take that, Luke. Well, there was a big gap. There was a big gap a few weeks ago, wasn't there?
Yeah, there certainly was. I'm just going to try bit of a mare tonight. I'm just going to try to change my microphone, and I know there's a bit of an echo. We'll get the predictions then. Right then, let's have a look. So we'll go to bye round. First game then, Fylde versus York. Two sides that are certainly down there. We've been talking quite a bit about them at the moment. Paul, take it away. How do you see this one going?
I've got AFC Fylde 3, York 1. Now, looking at sort of having been back in the saddle and having to talk about this, I sort of took some time out this afternoon just to look at form and everything else. And, I've gone with the Fylde home win purely because they're 7 out of the last 9 points. They've scored 7 goals in their last 2 wins. York haven't had a win in the last 4, which we just spoke about. They didn't even shine in the FA Cup. They lost to or drew with Needham Market in Chester. So this is a real 6-pointer, Luke. And I think when you look at what we've just been discussing, who could drop in and out of the bottom 4, both teams are going to be looking at this thinking they've got to get 3 points out of it. That archetypal 6-pointer, even at this stage of the season, is coming to fruition both at the bottom and the top. So as much as Chesterfield and Barnet could be a bit of a 6-pointer, this Fylde and York game would be as well. So I've gone with the Fylde win, purely looking at their form recently, the fact that Fylde at home and they are starting to score goals.
I'm going to agree with you on that one. I've actually gone more the other way than yourself. I've gone 3-0 to Fylde. You've mentioned there 7 goals in 2 games. York are certainly struggling at the moment, and I managed to get to see them in person against Halifax, and I personally thought they were very, very, very poor. Defensively, okay, and they set up well, quite well organised, but going forward, they offered very little. And probably, I would go down to say that one of the worst sides that I've seen this season, especially away from home, to go there. I was very disappointed with York, to be honest. I knew that they weren't playing well. I knew that they were underperforming, but I didn't think they were playing that bad. But for me, it felt like they belong down there at the moment. And I put it down to the players that they've brought in. I don't think they've thought enough about the recruitment. I think they've brought in big names that will attract a lot of attention from different people. As you can see, Ugler's always online promoting the players that he's bringing in, and they've brought in a lot of big names. But you're bringing in big names like Batty, for example, Woodyard, that have been playing in League One. Now, I want to know, why would they drop 2 leagues? There's clearly a reason that they're going to leave their clubs. And maybe, just maybe, it's because they're past it. And that might be a bit of a bold statement there. But that's something that I'm starting to feel and starting to get a feeling about. The only signing for me so far that really stands out as brilliant business is the Akanyemi one. And he's had his injury problems. So that might be another reason why York managed to get hold of him. So for me, York, I've got a few major concerns for at the moment in time. But Fylde, I think we need to give them a lot of credit. Horton, Yustabasi, another player that's been very good, especially recently. He's Turkish, I believe, from Chorley. And he was one of the major signings for them. He scored, I think he nearly got, did he score hat-tricks the other week? He might have done. I know he got a brace, but he's been a big part in the last 2 victories against very good opposition. So at the moment, Fylde are scoring for fun. And I think they're going to add to that against a very poor York side at the moment. So I'm going to go for 3-0 York. Next game then that we've got, Aldershot, who we've talked a bit about, who are flying at the moment against a Kidderminster side that maybe a few weeks ago we would say are struggling at the bottom of the league. But with the signings that they've made at the moment and maybe Asante coming in, this might be a bit of a banana skin for Aldershot. How do you see this one going, Paul?
It possibly could, couldn't it, Luke? But I genuinely don't think it will. I don't think Aldershot are going to go and score 7 goals again. And if they do, fair play to them. But like I said before, Kidderminster can't score goals. They're away from home. Yeah, they're putting up a bit of a fight. Shots are won 4 of the last 5. They've got a new manager. They've got a manager who signed a new contract. I think they're just going to be way too strong for Kiddie, and I think they're going to win 2-0.
I've gone for a similar scoreline again. I've gone for 2-1 to Aldershot. I think Aldershot, they're clearly on a roll at the moment, playing some very lovely stuff. They've only lost at once at home all season. Kidderminster, a lot better away, to be honest, than what they are at home this season, but they've only scored 1 goal. But they're still struggling for goals. They're still the lowest goal scorers in the division. I don't think it'll be an easy game at all for Aldershot. I think it's definitely a big banana skin, but I think they'll pull through. I think they'll win 2-1 for this game. We'll move on to the next game then now. I do believe there's a bit of an echo. I'll try sort that out. Next game that we've got, Altrincham versus Southend. Altrincham, who are flying at the moment, had a bit of a niggle recently. I don't think they've won in their last 3 games. Southend have had 4 draws away all season. So for me, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. How do you see it going, Paul?
I've gone for a 2-2 draw. I mean, if you look at it, sort of, they're very, very evenly matched, aren't they? They've both drawn their last games. Alty have, I mean, it depends. You can see stats in a different way, Luke, can't you? Because you've looked at it. I'm not saying you've looked at it negatively. They've lost their last 3. I've looked at it all. They've lost the 2 of the last 11, and the 2 they've lost is Barnet and Bromley. And now that's no disgrace to lose to Barnet and Bromley at this stage of the season. Southend, if you think about what Southend are doing, if they hadn't got that 10-point deduction, they would actually be in a similar position as Altrincham. They'd have the same amount of points, I think it is. Southend have got a transfer embargo lifting soon. So I think from their point of view, they've just got to start keep picking up points. Try not to get them injuries, get through this next couple of games, and then actually, if they can then start signing players, who knows where they might end up. So, they've lost 2 in the last 10, and they've lost in the cup. And if you look at who they've lost to Fylde, York, and Yeovil. So a team from below and 2 teams in the bottom 4. So Southend, I think, will always do better against the good teams. Altrincham seem to slip up against the strong teams. So they're very evenly matched. They've both drawn their last games. I think it's going to be... I don't think you can separate them, so I've gone for 2-2.
Yeah, 2 sides that have certainly started the season very well. Bournemouth versus Bromley. Bournemouth struggling at the moment, and I keep expecting them to improve and climb the table, because you always think, oh, it's Boreham Wood. They'll always be in and around the playoffs. And as the season's progressing, I'm starting to turn the other way and think they're simply not good enough to be up there this season. And I think, if anything, they should be looking over the shoulder at the moment. Bromley certainly on form at the moment, and have certainly stepped it up a gear this season. I don't think it'll be a battering from Bromley. I think it'll be a tight game. I don't think it'll be a pretty game by all means. I think both sides play quite similar style of football, the industrial style. But I think Bromley will pull through simply because they're just a better side this season than Bournemouth, and they've got more going forward with the likes of Cheek. So yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-0 Bromley win. How do you see it going, Paul?
Similar. I've gone with a 2-0 Bromley win. There's something not quite right at Boreham Wood, is there? I mean, Luke Garrard must be under a bit of pressure. There's, a few weeks ago, Danny Hunter, the chairman, posted as quite a lengthy chairman's notes within their programme. And it was a really sort of cryptic sort of suggestion around what the manager is or hasn't done, what they didn't do in the summer, and he's as much to blame. And I don't know if anyone got the opportunity today, but if you go on the Boreham Wood Twitter feed or X feed, they posted a video around the progress they've made since 1999 through to today. It was almost like an obituary, sort of as if I don't know whether that's something that the chairman has put out to try and get his ego massaged, or trying to suggest, look what we have done, because there's moaning that where they're at the present time and they've stalled a little bit. So I think, Luke Garrard's definitely under pressure. He doesn't play the best brand of football. He's very pragmatic. Like you said, I think Boreham Wood Bromley is not one for the purists, without doubt, Luke. I think you're quite right. Yeah. But Boreham Wood have really, they're in that unfamiliar position, but they've put themselves in that position where they're really, I would suggest, average recruitment in the summer. They've not kicked on from their playoff positions and their FA Cup runs of the previous years. And when you analyse their results, they adopt them almost a win, lose, draw scenario in every 3-game period. Not necessarily in that order, but, they're due a loss or a win, and I can't see anything but a loss on Saturday. And as for Bromley, I think the biggest threat they've got, we talk about players going in January. I think the biggest threat Bromley have is losing their manager. I think Andy Woodman's stock is very high. He clearly can do things with youth, can develop those. He can do things on probably what is quite a respectable budget and infrastructure at Bromley. And having only lost one in the last 10, and that's being Chesterfield, they've got to be the most informed team outside of Barnet and Bromley, outside of Barnet and Chesterfield. So I can only see one result here happening, and that's Bromley winning.
You mentioned Andy Woodman then, and him getting a move and that's the biggest threat at the moment for Bromley, and him leaving. Do you not think managers in the EFL will be looking at maybe, and I might be being a bit ageist here, but younger managers, up and coming managers that play more of an attractive style of football? Because as we're both aware, yes, it's effective football that Andy Woodman plays, but his style of football isn't easy on the eye. And in the Football League, that's not what managers are looking for. Well, chairmen are looking for at the moment. Maybe.
But Luke, why do chairmen and clubs sack managers?
Because it's not going right.
Because they're not playing well. They're not picking up results. They're in the bottom. So if you brought Andy Woodman in, and I'm not suggesting he's similar, but remember with the Sam Allardyce sort of situation. If you brought Andy Woodman in, and they play in a brand of football that gets them some wins and gets them up the table, fans aren't going to care. It's a point of, if you play that brand of football and you aren't winning games, then fans get the hump, don't they? Because and you'll probably find that's probably what's happened at Boreham Wood. Boreham Wood play a similar style. They're quite pragmatic. They crash the ball forward. They get the ball wide. They get the ball in the box. They don't play through the thirds, but they're not getting results. So no one's happy. Okay, so Andy Woodman, if he was to leave, he's going to go into a job that needs a bit of a rescue mission, needs a bit of a resort. So I don't think that's a problem short term. It's whether that happens longer term.
That's my thinking behind it, because what I'd say is, man, yes, short term, if the side's struggling, maybe you look at Tranmere, for example, maybe not because it's quite far up north and I don't think he'd move there. But maybe Colchester, who are struggling at the moment near the bottom, you might look at that job. I think he might have been rumoured there, to be honest. I haven't checked. But even if he managed to keep Colchester up, he's not the sort of manager that I think is going to go up the leagues with a team, if that makes sense. And Bromley, he's well thought of, he's well respected. Why would he want to leave Bromley to go to an EFL side where, you know, you might only get a few months? Even if he kept a side up, the chairman might go, thank you for what you've done. You've kept us in the division. That's your job. Sorry, time for you to leave and move on now. We don't like your style of football. It's not suited to us.
It's a really difficult one, Luke, because as a manager, as a player or a manager, you've got to weigh up when your stock is high. At what point do you go if you go? You know, I remember speaking to a friend of mine who's a respected rugby league coach, and I had a conversation with him. He coached down here, London Broncos, and he got them as far as he could. And at that point, it was a case of, right, where I've had offers. And I'm like, you've got to go, mate, because your stock is high. If you then join the next season and you become 6th, 7th, 8th, you're not maybe going to get that opportunity in the Super League again. And Andy Woodman's got to look at the same. You know, he's never managed in the EFL. He's coached at the Premier League level and EFL level through, you know, with Newcastle and Alan Pardew, but he's never managed that level. So although he's not young, he's untested at a higher level as a manager. And although his stock is high, you know, is he going to back himself to go into that level and do well? It's a risk. You know, Mike Williamson's done exactly the same. MK Dons have taken a risk on Mike Williamson a little bit because he's untested at that level. He's played at that level. He's coached at that level. Managing is a different kettle of fish. So it's going to be a risk on either side, whoever recruits these managers, as and when it happens. And if it does, you know, Andy Woodman may stay up probably for the next 15, 20 years and do wonders with them. So it's a real conundrum. It's a risk on both sides.
Now we've got the next game. Now it's up to you, Paul. So we'll leave this to the end because for me, it's by far the game of the game week. And it'd be a good way to probably end the show. So we'll go on to Gateshead versus Dorking. Two sides, and we said this last year when we did our preview for this game last year. Two sides that play a very similar style of football. Gateshead are in a bit of free fall at the moment. Of course, they lost to Fylde. I think they lost 3-0, didn't they, to Fylde at home as well. And to be fair, I watched the vlog that the Heed Army did, and they seemed very, very deflated, after, like anyone would be, but very nervous, maybe a bit anxious about what's to come after that, because to have a result like that where you lose by that margin in you, for me, shows that maybe they're not the finished article. Like maybe you might say at the start of the season, and that Williamson's gone, it's going to have an impact on them. And then to go 3-0 down against a side in the league below in the FA Cup and be knocked out of that, which is a major part of what they want to do, is to get to the next round of the FA Cup because of the money that brings in, and something that I think they would need in January to be able to compete with sides, you know, around them, is the fact that they'll need money to bring in players in January, and they've kind of lost quite a good sum of money there, losing in the FA Cup. But for me, I go into this and Rob Elliott particularly, and I know there's a lot of people questioning him and saying you're not good enough for this level. Well, not that you're not good enough, but you're not as good as Luke Williamson. And he shouldn't be the manager. We should get a different manager, and he's got history behind him, experience behind him of being a manager. But for me, I look at the way Gateshead play at the moment, and they haven't changed the style of football. So he's not tried to adapt his own style. They're still dominating the football. I looked against Fylde. They had the same amount of shots as Fylde did in that game. You know, they're playing a very similar style of football. Against Rochdale, they kept more of the ball than Rochdale did, who also have a lot of the ball themselves. And for me, I think every side's going to have a niggle at some point in the season. And I think Gateshead are just having theirs at the moment. And yes, Williamson going is going to have an effect on the players. But for me, I'd give Elliott a bit more time. And I think you look at Dorking at home. Dorking side who are very inconsistent at the moment. You don't know what Dorking side's going to turn up. For me, I think it's a perfect opportunity for Gateshead to win here. So I'm actually going to go for a 2-0 Gateshead win. How do you?
I've gone with Gateshead to win 1-0, and I think you've hit the nail on the head, Luke. Both teams aren't in great form. Dorking have had one win since October, and that was against Aldershot, surprisingly. And when you look at Gateshead, since Williamson left, they've only beaten Stourbridge, and I think the biggest challenge that they have is the goals have dried up. So they've got absolutely. If you're not going to score goals, you're always in the chance of losing the game because you may let one in. So, neither of them have got huge confidence, but I think Gateshead will win 1-0. And as Luke, it appears Luke has lost the feed again. So, what I'll do is I'll go on to Hartlepool versus Ebbsfleet, which is next. Again, very, very similar to Gate Dorking. Both teams are not in a great run of form. Both need a morale-boosting win. Ebbsfleet, I think, can get sucked into that bottom four. Hartlepool maybe have too much and they're a little bit too far ahead. But it's really difficult with this one because, Hartlepool, they're not showing any sort of consistency of form, either home or away. Willstone can pin the fact that they're doing very well at home. As an example, Hartlepool have suffered with their injuries and their loss of form, and the owner wants to sell, so not a happy camp up there. And I think, fortunately, they're at home. They're going to win 1-0 against Ebbsfleet because if you look at Ebbsfleet, their form is as poor as Hartlepool's. They're only 1 point outside that relegation zone, and their last win in the National League was in September, and that was against the 10-man Boreham Wood. So, it's a tough ask for Ebbsfleet to go up to Hartlepool and maybe get a win, a draw at best. But I think Hartlepool are going to win 1-0 on that one. The next game coming up, Maidenhead Halifax. Now, unfortunately, Luke is still not online, but we'll try and see whether he comes back on in time to digest his team. Because looking at Halifax, they're going to have to travel down to Berkshire. They're going to have to travel down to Maidenhead and try and get some out of the game. But they've slowly sneaked up to sixth place. You look at what we talked about earlier in the season where Halifax showed a level of inconsistency. Some fans weren't happy with their manager, but I think Halifax sneaking into sixth. They're showing a really good run of form. No loss in the last 5. Luke, we're just talking Maidenhead Halifax here. I'm just sort of digesting what Halifax have done in the last sort of 5 games. And it's interesting. And you've been watching them more, Luke, but no losses in the last 5 games after what was a wretched September where they won 1 in 7.
Yeah, we've certainly improved. And just before I go on, I do apologise once again. We're having a lot of issues with the internet tonight, as you're all aware. My Hartlepool Ebbsfleet prediction was 2-1 to Hartlepool. But Maidenhead versus Halifax for me, we've certainly improved. I think, defensively we've been solid. But I think the players that have come back from injury have really added something. Florent Hotte, I think a lot of York fans saw his goal when we played them, and those who watched on TNT saw his goal. He offers something different for us. Millie Alley's getting on the ball more now than what he was doing because Florent Hotte is bringing him into the game. Kane's Thomas Sommers, working fans will be aware of him. He's come in and he's added something in the midfield for us too. So we're a lot stronger in the midfield, and we're finding ways to grind out these results. And now we've finally managed to win at home. We're certainly building something, but of course we're going away to a massive bogey team in Maidenhead in recent years. Even when we've been doing well, we've dropped points to them in the past. But for me, the way we're built this season, I like to think that we're going to go there and actually win. I wouldn't usually, but the way we play and the way Maidenhead play, I think it's the perfect type of game for us to go there and essentially go and just nab a 1-0 win or a 2-1 win. But Maidenhead at the moment are scoring a lot of goals themselves. They're not a bad side, I don't think. They've got Zimba, who's come on loan from Newport, who's doing well in recent weeks. Looks a massive unit going forward. So for me, I think it'll be a tight game. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Halifax win. How do you see it going, Paul?
I've gone with a 2-0 Halifax win because, I think the fact they're showing a good run of form, losing to Marine, I think, was a blip. You know, there's no disgrace, I don't think, in losing to teams lower. When you look at some of the results that did occur. The problem Maidenhead have got is they don't keep many clean sheets. They've let 9 goals in the last 3 National League matches. And although they won the last time out, I think Halifax is going to be too strong for them. But 2-0 to Halifax.
Well, Maidenhead, they've scored 7 goals in the last 3 matches, but they've only won 1 of those games. You know, they're scoring over 2 goals a game, just over, and they've still only managed to win 1 of the last 3 games, which says a lot about them at the moment. You know, usually we always think Maidenhead are sound defensively, and going forward they just find a way to pull through. But at the moment they're kind of scoring a lot, but they're also conceding a number of goals too. Oldham v Eastleigh, then take it away, Paul. How do you see it going?
What have I got there? Oh, I've got an Oldham win. Now the big thing with Oldham, and their fans seem to have constant meltdowns on social media because they never pick up the results they expect, do they? But they're just consistently inconsistent, Oldham. You know, a little bit like Neil Ardley's had at York. I don't think Mickey Mellon's had that desired effect, that new manager bounce where they pick up results. So, you know, their last run of wins when they beat York, Oxford, and Kidderminster, they're all in the bottom 4. You know, so then they're beating the teams you expect to beat, but they're not picking up other results. And then they had another run where they got 3 consecutive draws. So they're just inconsistent as much as no one knows whether they're going to win or draw or lose at any given time. So, I mean, they're 10th, Eastleigh 11th, same amount of points. Again, they're very evenly matched. I've gone with an Oldham win, again, purely because they're at home. I've gone with them to win 2-1. Eastleigh don't draw many matches. And since Richard Hill's come in charge, you know, they've won 5, lost 3. You know, they're only 4 points off the playoffs, but I think they're going to be happy that they're just a bit more secure than they were maybe a few weeks ago.
Yeah, well, I know I go into this game and I think you look at Oldham and they need to start, if they're wanting to get into the playoffs, they need to start picking up results, and especially at home. You know, I think the 4 points off the playoffs you just mentioned there.
Yeah.
So, you know, win here is be a massive win if they really want to consider themselves as playoff candidates this season. For me, I think they'll win. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Oldham win. They've got to start picking results up. You know, they can't just keep going through manager after manager. They need to give Mellon time, though. Someone's mentioned if Oldham lose Mellon out and bring back maybe not do that. But yeah, we'll move on to the next game now, as we have gone up. Well, we're going on, aren't we, because of the internet issues. So my bad. Oxford v Woking then. Woking are certainly struggling at the moment. But away from home, they're a lot better. I think they've got the 7th best away record in the division. And they're going to an Oxford side that are certainly struggling. So if there was ever an away game that you wanted to get a win, it'd be a game like this. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 Woking win. How do you see this one going?
I've actually gone for the reverse. I've gone with a 2-1 Oxford City win. Now, I just got a hunch that, you know, they need a win. They are at home. They play on 4G, which is sort of obviously suits them because they're used to it. It's really difficult, isn't it? Because, you know, Oxford City aren't under any real pressure. You know, if they go down, they go down. You know, it's one of those things. Whereas Woking, I mean, similar to Luke Garrard, they've got a really established National League manager in Darren Saul. He must be under pressure. They've recruited in the summer. I don't think their recruitment's been brilliant. I think it's been a little bit indifferent. And they're in that 12th place, which is going to be really unfamiliar, really unfamiliar to them. And they've lost to Ramsgate, and they've only beaten Eastleigh, Hemel Hempstead in a replay, and AFC Fylde. So again, they beat Fylde in the bottom 4, Oxford City in the bottom 4, but I've just got a gut feel that Oxford are going to sort of grab one out of the bag here and win 2-1.
Fair play. A lot of people have backed Oxford. I think we've only seen two people, back Woking. You know, Sal, people are saying he's under pressure at the moment, and a few Woking fans are calling for him. I think it's a bit silly, to be honest, from what he's done there and what he's building. They've just not had the best of starts so far. Wheelstone versus Rochdale, then your side. Of course, there's talks about Wheelstone. Well, it's confirmed Wheelstone are going to be building. It's something I forgot to mention. A new 6,600 seat stadium, I believe.
Yes, yes.
Why would you want to leave the current ground when you've got the 6th best home record in the division? But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, they've had. It's been disclosed today that the London Borough of Hillingdon, which is where Wealdstone are based now, have kindly granted them a piece of land to build a multi-purpose stadium on. I mean, I don't know too much of the finer detail. The press release has come out. It's going to be about, I think, 6,300 seater capacity stadium. And to be honest with you, Luke, it's what Wealdstone needs at the moment. They're hanging on in the National League, and they do what they do in the National League because they're at the Vale. It's a 4,000 capacity stadium. It's a football ground, not a football stadium. And there's many stadiums in the National League. We've got a football ground that is it's been built piecemeal. It's almost like a Meccano set. It's just been built on and on and on. And if we want serious investment, I'm not suggesting the likes of the Wrexhams, but if you want something like Altrincham who have a bit of investment, we need a new ground. So I think the main aim now for Wealdstone is just to progress in the next couple of years, stay in the National League. And when they then hopefully get this new ground, revenue streams will open up because, we'll have more corporate sponsorship, we'll have more investment, hopefully have more fans. So the future looks very, very bright. You think in 2008, they went to the Vale in Ruislip, they were homeless. They were in Ryman League Division 3. We're now in consistently sort of in and around the top half of the National League. It's a great story, and the news today has made a lot of Wealdstone fans happy. So hopefully that will show on the pitch on the weekend. We've only lost one all season in the National League. As I said, our home form is underpinning our status in the National League at present. I don't think we'll win on Saturday. I think we will draw because Rochdale are just a strong, solid National League side who they haven't made great noises when they come in, have they? Their fans haven't. They're not going in thinking we're going to piss this league because we're Rochdale and we've been in League Two, etc., etc. But they're just showing a bit of inconsistency at the moment. So I think we will draw 1-1. That's what I'm hoping, and keep that sort of home form intact.
I've actually gone for Wealdstone to win, to be honest. Rochdale, they are a little inconsistent this season. You look there. They've had like a loss, a draw, then a win. It's very inconsistent from Rochdale. So for me, I'm going to back Wealdstone, especially with the news that they've had today. I think they'll be wanting to put on a show after that. And yeah, it's good to see. And I do just hope, I don't know when it's going to be finally built. I think you'll probably have more information than me. But when that does happen, it'll be brilliant to see. And, I think, like you've mentioned, it's something Wealdstone do need because I do think they've got the squad to survive. They've got the players there. But they need to, with the ground and the fan base, if they're wanting to have the ambitions not just to be a club that survives in the National League and be a club that progresses, they need to have better facilities and they need to have, more depth. And the way you get more depth is by having more funds, and more funds comes from, more investment at the club. We'll move on to the next one. I know a lot of people have come in tonight, and I do apologise because we haven't particularly looked at the live chat. We usually do for those who are new, as I've seen it, 1 or 2 people who've come in who are new tonight. The problem is it's just very laggy from my side of things. The internet, to be honest, I'm not just avoiding you. Dagenham v Solihull, the televised game. A few weeks ago I'll be back in Solihull, but Solihull are obviously struggling as of recent. They got a win against your boys, but it was, of course, at home against a Wealdstone side that are very poor away from home. Dagenham have got an impressive win, of course, against Dorking away from home. But problem with Dagenham is they'll win a game and then they'll lose a game or they'll draw a game. So for me, this one I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. How do you see it going?
I've gone for a 2-2 draw, actually. I mean, I think you're right. You looked at Dagenham, they brought in Ben Strevens, didn't they? And it never really took off. And their form in September and up to mid-October was absolutely dreadful. I mean, I think Wealdstone was one of the few teams they actually did beat. And, they have picked up lately. And I think winning 3 of the last 4 is a real fillip for them. I think they're now stable in mid-table. I don't think there's there's harm of them getting relegated. Although, you know, a few weeks ago we would sort of maybe had them in that conversation. So I think Dagenham being at home, you always have to take the home advantage as a bit of a thing to when you're looking at what the score may be. But Solihull may not have been doing quite as well as we think, Luke, but they still only have lost 2 all season. I mean, to go that many games and only lose 2 games is pretty impressive. The problem is, I think, is they draw too many games, don't they? You know, so they've got to convert them draws into wins, and I think they would be maybe a bit closer to Barnet and Chesterfield. But I don't. I think it will be a draw. You know, those 2 losses have been against Aldershot and Southend, and that's again, that can't be disgraced. And then they got a good draw at Barnet, so that they can compete with the top teams. And I think if they were at home, I probably would be going for a home win. But I think being away, I think they'll be happy with a draw. So I've gone with 2-2.
We'll move on to the final game then. Probably the game of the game week. Chesterfield versus Barnet. First versus second. The 2 highest goal scorers in the division. Take it away, Paul.
I mean, what can you say about it? Like you said, game of the week. I mean, Chesterfield haven't lost since the 26th of August. I mean, that is some record, isn't it? They've had 1 draw in that time, which happened to be Maidenhead. You know what Maidenhead, like with the top teams, you know, they can be a real bogey side for them. But and they're going to go into it with a full of confidence. They beat Portsmouth in the weekend in the FA Cup as well. So they're a real machine. I worked out earlier. At the current rate of points per game, they could amass 119 points. I can't see that happening. You know, they got to keep up the record they're keeping now, but to amass 119 points average as we speak now, that is an incredible. And that's where I think Chesterfield they will win the league. And I agree with you there, Luke. But I don't think it's going to be quite as clear cut as maybe you're suggesting. But I don't know. Barnet, as I said before, they love a late goal. They're very resilient. They've got strength in depth. They seem to grind out results. They're riding high on confidence, similar to Chesterfield. So this is a really, really difficult one to call. I might be repeating myself, but I've gone with the Chesterfield win purely because of that home advantage and just a bit more about them sort of all over the pitch. But I wouldn't be surprised if either team win. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a draw. I think it's one of those where it's really difficult to call.
I think when I look at this game, if you're a side going to Chesterfield now, I think it is a place that you're starting to fear going to. Because if they're beating a Portsmouth side who hadn't lost a game all season, who are 2 leagues above them as well. Not many sides. Chesterfield must have the feeling, the players, Paul Cook, the fan base must have the feeling that, look, no one's going to come to our place and take points off us now. And they'll probably think, we can beat top of the league Portsmouth from League One. And then surely we can beat second place Barnet in the National League. And I think, to be fair, I think that's probably what will happen. I do think Chesterfield will win this game, just purely because I think they'll have too much for Barnet. There's a reason that they're above them at the moment, and I think it's because they're just a slightly better team. They've got slightly more depth, that slight bit more quality across the board. It's got a lot of expectation to live up to this game because both sides are such high scoring, first versus second. So, there's quite a high expectation. And I could see a bit of a crazy score happening in this game. I think there'll be a lot of adversity throughout the game. It'll be, it should hopefully be a bit of a firecracker, this game. So for me, I'm going to go for a 4-2 Chesterfield win. Like I said, I think there'll be a lot of goals and, that will be a proper entertaining afternoon for myself. I think we've more or less finished there, as I think my laptop's trying to tell me to say as well. But Paul, thank you very much for joining me tonight, and also kind of keeping hold of the show while I've been gone. I do appreciate it. Paul, thanks for coming on.
No problem. Nice. It's nice to be back, and as I say, thank got to say thank you to all those that have tuned in. Unfortunately, we weren't able to interact as much as we possibly could have, but there's always next week, Luke. There's always next week.
Yeah, there certainly is. Of course, now we'll be back, hopefully, week after week. Hopefully, doing it on a bit more consistent basis. Of course, we've got the FA Trophy coming up. So that's a bit annoying as well. But we'll try and keep it as every Thursday as long as we can from now on. But yeah, thank you to everyone that's tuned in tonight. Let's hope next week I've got better internet connection. And we will see you next time. Bye for now.